organizations where their personal brands, particularly of customer-facing people, have such a big impact on customer loyalty. And then, second of all, we realized that in addition to leveraging the personal brand of customer-facing employees, that most organizations were falling short of building a stronger brand because they had no easy tool to engage all of their employees, really to engage not just the personal brands of customer-facing employees, but to engage and energize the personal brands of everybody inside so that the corporate brand was more readily and more effectively being built. And based upon that, that work is where we came up with the idea of Brand 3, which I'll explain to you in a minute, where Brand 3 came from, what it is, and how you can use it. I'd like to introduce you to my colleague and friend, Kevin McArdle.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for being here. Kevin McArdle with McArdle Business Advisors. And for the past 25 years, I've really worked to help companies grow in crowded markets. And specifically through our high-value selling approach, we help salespeople really take business away from the competition without using price as a weapon. And so in our conversation this morning with you, Carl is really representing the brand and the marketing component of these discussions, and I'm representing our conversation from the sales side and the sales perspective. And so when we get in talking a little bit about the Brand 3 components, you're going to see there's a marketing and sales integration piece. And so that's why the two of us have decided to come together and supply and provide these insights to you about Brand 3 and leveraging the power of brand alignment to deepen your customer relationships. It's important for you to know that this program is specifically designed to give you some high-level strategies and best practices and practical tools to help you deepen your customer relationship through leveraging the power of brand. And we are recording our session this morning, and we'll make sure that we can make a copy of the program available to you at the end of the program. And also, Catherine Hendrickson is our moderator today, and she will be receiving and moderating any questions that you might have. So I would encourage you to submit questions, and we will field those at the appropriate time during our conversation this morning and make sure that we answer those before the conclusion of our session. And I also want you to know in the time together that we have, we'll be giving you lots of content-rich material, and at the end of the session, we'll let you know how you can have greater access to more information about the topic. And so as Carl mentioned, we want to walk through how Brand 3 works and what's important, what Brand 3 really consists of, and how to leverage and deepen customer relationships through Brand 3, and then how we implement Brand 3 for results. And so at this time, I'm going to hand it back to Carl. Carl, tell us, why should we consider Brand 3? Why is this an important topic for us?
Thanks, Kevin. And just to add to what Kevin said in terms of procedural here, we are targeting to get through this in about 30 minutes, and obviously, if there are questions that carry us further, we have done that, but just for your time management standpoint. So why Brand 3? Why does that matter, and why does it matter now? First and foremost, I can tell you, based upon our work, that the personal brand of salespeople is an under-leveraged corporate asset by virtually every company that I can imagine. And the reason it's an under-leveraged asset is not that companies don't believe in the importance of strong salesperson-customer relationships. It's because there's not been a practical framework to help salespeople build strong brands. And gets to my second point, why Brand 3, is because when you look at Brand 3, if you use the concept of personal brand and integrate it with the product and corporate brands of an organization, you now are able to gain much stronger brand building power. And in fact, as I alluded to earlier, that when you integrate all three of these brands, you're able to extend brand building to where it matters most, which is to the customer level. Now, sometimes when we talk about salespeople's personal brands, you should also think about the personal brand of customer service people. Or you should think about the personal brand of, if your product, if it's a business-to-business case, if your product happens to be highly technical, it's the personal brand of the tech rep or the service person. But why Brand 3? And let me give you the next piece, which is, where did Brand 3 come from? when we think about brands, and brands really being those marketing assets that endear customers to a company, brand management was started back in 1927 by Procter & Gamble, and brand management was built around the idea of how do we create a relationship between a product and a consumer. So next time the consumer wanted to buy something, they went back to the same product as opposed to consider another one. So in essence, it was about building so as long as companies could maintain loyalty between their product and the consumer, well, then they had strong marketing leverage. Well, then that got augmented, and that got augmented by some organizations wanted to build a customer relationship between the company and the customer, and that was sometimes because it was a business-to-business arena, or in some cases they didn't have product brands established. But in either case, for the longest time, brand building boiled down to companies having strategies that they would try to optimize product brands and corporate brands and or some combination. But frankly, for many industries, that fell short. As an example, any industry where there's a high level of service, or whether it's a professional service or a personal service, and it was not until this model of personal brand that was created that we have the full extent to which we could now use all three brands to build customer loyalty. And in fact, I'm oftentimes will ask customers. In fact, I was with a group of people this morning and asked them this question I ask a lot of folks. If you look at those brands, the product brand, the corporate brand, and the personal brand, each represent brands that can garner and sustain loyalty with customers. The question I ask is, if you had 100 points for loyalty, if you had 100 points to say, where does my loyalty stand? Is it 30% of the loyalty is driven by the product brand, 30 the company, or 30 the personal brand, or is it or what is that ratio? And so, as an example, this morning happened to be a financial services organization, and this workshop was with a bunch of leaders, a group of leaders, and they all said the same thing, that the personal brand of the financial service provider represented no less than 70% of the impact on client loyalty, and 30% maybe to their corporate brand. Well, this is why it's important to think about brand three, is where would you and your company allocate those loyalty points? And what I want to emphasize is it's not about, there's no good or bad. You have to decide what range do you want. Do you want to have, what mix do you want to have between corporate, personal, and product, and just manage that mix. But ultimately, what's really, really important here is that you have alignment, because if there's alignment between all three of those brands, then not only do they all grow faster, but they also minimize any risk if one of those brands tends to fall down or leave. So that's the basis from a brand perspective, of why brand three is so important. Now, Kevin, what's your perspective from sales leadership?
Well, my perspective is, as you look at this from a brand perspective, this makes perfect sense. And where the integration and the importance of personal brand comes from a sales perspective is, as you look at product brands and corporate brands, and more importantly, products and services, there is so much parity out there in the market. Products, services, and companies are all seen as commodities. And it's incredibly more and more difficult to differentiate. And oftentimes, all this time and energy that's been developing these product and corporate brands is diluted through the sales process and lost at the point of sale. And so now more than ever, the sales conversation is becoming more and more the last bastion and opportunity for competitive differentiation. And there lies the importance of considering product brand, corporate brand, and personal brand in the sales conversation. And I like to equate it or call it the final 3 feet of branding, and that's the distance from the salesperson to the prospect or the customer. We've got 3 feet, and we need to bridge that 3 feet in our brand strategy. And so if you haven't considered this competency and you don't address personal brand, you run the risk of diluting your brand and losing it at the point of sale and not leveraging your brand to the fullest potential. And so from my perspective, from a sales and sales leadership, this personal brand issue is becoming a core competency that's needed to be successful in the marketplace.
Thanks, Kevin. I would just add one thing to that, which is I can't tell you the number of times I've worked with some of our clients, the marketing, the CMO types, who get so frustrated because so much of their brand building strategy and power gets lost in that last 3 feet of brand building power. And in fact, how many times have I seen frustrated CMOs say, you know what, I just can't make it work. These salespeople just don't get it. So what they do is they try to invest in pull-through marketing strategies and advertising strategies, which can be the most expensive, and for some industries, really the most ineffective. So it really does drive some skewing in strategies. But so what is the Brand 3 process? In a nutshell, there are really 2 parts to Brand 3. There is the one part where we are offering tools to help salespeople build stronger personal brands. Their personal brands are important no matter where you'd allocate that loyalty. So number one, we're offering some tools to build stronger personal brands, so those personal brands can be integrated into overall marketing strategies. And the second of all, it's a practical, sustainable process to integrate all 3 of those brands. So we're going to give you tools to build strong personal brands that are close to the customer, so it gives you a new brand to leverage, and then a way to integrate all 3. So the way we're going to do that is a very simple graphic, and the rest of the presentation now, we will take you through each one of these pieces, starting with platform development, then personal brand building, the power brand alignment, and then an actual learning program. So each one of these make up the Brand 3 offer. What we can tell you is that any of these tools can be used on their own or in combination. So as we move on, I want to first talk now about the platform development. The first piece in terms of building a strong Brand 3 offering is you got to define those brands. So I like this quote: if I can't name it, I can't know it, or conversely, if I can name it, I can know it. And the point being, I can't tell you how many times I've worked with clients where they haven't adequately defined their brands, either product or corporate brands, in practical terms so that those brands can be consistently used and leveraged. And without a clear definition, there's no way to think that you'll get conscious alignment or a way to leverage all 3 brands. So the way in which we will help individuals, the first part of our clients, in the first part of this Brand 3 process, is we've developed this model. I mean, it's about 20 years old, but the one thing it does very well, and that is that it is the simplest way we can get anybody to think about brand. That is that every brand is a set of perceptions based upon what the brand does, its standards about how it goes about what it does, and its style about how it shows up. And using this simple framework, then, we can help every organization take their current product brand definition, which usually is a positioning statement or a tagline, or a corporate brand, which is usually a set of corporate identity guidelines and maybe a positioning statement, and then leg those out and use this practical model to create very clear, pragmatic definitions so 2 things happen. So salespeople can do a much better job of delivering on these messages in the corporation. The organization can do a good job of integrating all 3. So as an example, if you've defined your corporate and product brands and you have certain strategies, then you want to make sure that the kind of personal brands you have in the team are consistent or can be repositioned to leverage those. That's platform development. That's done, again, that's a consulting and facilitation process. But I want to get to the core of what Brand 3 is about, which is personal brand building. And here, what I want to do is to take you all through the simple concepts of personal brand. Now, personal brand is familiar to some folks, not a lot. What we've done is we've created a strong, usable framework to build strong personal brands. But, you know, the question we get asked a lot is, why build a strong personal brand? Why invest in the strong personal brands of salespeople? And here's the simplest way I can tell you, is that strong personal brands have access to big opportunities. And success of big opportunities grow personal brands further and faster. That is, when you have strong personal brands out in the field, strong personal brands representing the company, those strong personal brands will garner and create big opportunities. Because why? Because when clients respect those personal brands, they will give them opportunities. I can tell you, I was talking recently to an executive at a merchandising executive at Target, and he told this to me in a different way. He said, you know what? Whenever we want new ideas and when we want new ways to approach things, there's a handful of people we call every single time. And it's because of certain people who've done business with us for a while and we respect them. And so those personal brands are given opportunities that others in the company don't have access to. So some of you may be familiar with the fact I wrote a book called Be Your Own Brand. It's actually 2002. It was really the first book that delivered a practical, business-oriented version of personal brand. We have since then, we have workshops, and we've taught thousands and thousands of people about personal brand, how to build their strong personal brand, how to align with their company brand. And so the concepts we know are practical and they're proven, and I want to just to let everybody in this presentation in on the three simple concepts that make up a strong personal brand. And I can tell you, as I met with these financial services leaders today, all three of these concepts are concepts that are common sense yet are not consciously applied every day. And that is helping individuals understand the importance of perception. Helping salespeople understand that they are accountable to the perceptions they leave, not just the things they do, is a huge skill development issue. I can tell you that most people hold themselves accountable to the things that they want to do, not to the perceptions they leave. So personal brand and these personal brand tools will help you develop skills around developing stronger perceptions. Then there's the idea of distinctive, relevant, consistent. We help people understand if you want to build a strong personal brand, there has to be something distinctive about you, that you have to know how to make it relevant, which is an important skill, and then finally that you are consistent in the way that you create value. And then finally, in personal brand, people learn the importance of making a difference, and making a difference that matters most to somebody else. You know, this idea of perception, how often do you plan for perceptions? I can tell you this, it happened again this morning. I've asked literally thousands of people, how often do they, before they go into a sales meeting or any kind of business meeting, any meeting of any kind, how often do they take the time to write down the three perceptions that they want to leave at the conclusion of that meeting? And this is a test because everybody understands perceptions are reality, and we say, but do you really hold yourself accountable? And as I asked this morning, as I've asked thousands of people, and nobody ever raises their hand, and I mean absolutely nobody ever raises their hand. And you say, well, if you believe perception is reality, why don't you plan for it? And the two most common answers are, I'm sure I'll leave the right perception. Well, being unconsciously competent is interesting if you can do it. Or the second thing is, you know what, I've never thought about the perceptions that I want to leave. I just think about the objectives I have to call. We have to remind them when it comes to building a strong personal brand, it's the perceptions that you leave that are building the relationship for the opportunity the next day.
I just want to chime in here, Carl. Most times when we're working with sales leaders and salespeople, when they think about the pre-call planning you do, you think in terms of where is the customer in the sales cycle or in their buying cycle. What steps are we going to take to move them along and progress them through the sales cycle? What is my goal of this call? And those are all important pre-call planning activities, but rarely and probably more never does the salesperson or the sales leader ask the question, what perceptions do you want to leave as a result of this sales call? And so when you think about this from a sales perspective and a sales leadership perspective, when Carl is talking about perceptions and proactively planning for the perceptions that you want to leave, that is consciously addressing this before the sales conversation. Not only what do I want to accomplish, but what perceptions do I want to leave the prospect and customer with when I walk out of this room? What do I want them to be thinking? What perceptions do I want to leave them with? What impressions do I want them to have of me and of this conversation? And as Carl said, the perceptions that you leave today are building your relationships for tomorrow. And so this concept of considering and identifying and discovering the perceptions that you want to leave ahead of time is integral to any successful sales call.
Thanks, Kevin. And I would just add to what Kevin said, which is, you know, the idea of planning for perceptions. This is a good example of how we've been able to adapt the proven discipline of brand management that we've learned from product and corporate on the personal level. And so how do we do that? We do that because we have two tools that are part of the Brand 3 offering. One of them is the Personal Brand Platform Toolkit, and this is a toolkit that every salesperson, which, by the way, I want to reiterate, when Kevin talked about perceptions that you're planning to leave, it's not just salespeople. It's salespeople, it's customer service people, it's engineers, it's people in the field, it's all those people. The same concepts apply. Their personal brands matter. We have two tools as a part of the Brand 3 offering. There's the toolkit. This is a kit that contains a 34-minute audio tape that has a core tutorial. Then it has a tool for the individual to define their personal brand, starting with who they are, their values, etc. And then there's a tool in there to assess their brand, where they go out and they find out from customers, prospects, other business associates, even people in their personal life, what they think of them. I.e., they do, in essence, a 360 assessment, but it comes back in the form of a personal brand assessment, so they then can compare the brand they want to be with the brand that they really are. So this provides a clear set of learning around how well am I being perceived, or how I'm being perceived, how well I'm leaving the perceptions I want to leave, how well am I getting credit for who I am, and how relevant am I. And then once they do that tool, that's before they come to the workshop. That notebook on the right is a workshop that we've developed, or something we've customized from our core workshop. And this is a personal brand management workshop that is, again, depending upon how you want to design it, a 4 to 6 hour workshop that when people walk out of here, they have learned all the core skills that make up personal brand building competency. In addition to learning those skills, there's a lot of hands-on exercises so they know how to build the perceptions, measure the perceptions, and get credit for the brand that they really are. And so, as an example, one of the things they'll learn is they'll define their personal brand, and that is, what are their standards, what are their style. This is an easy model. Again, thousands of people have used this in every education level, every job grade level, profit, nonprofit, government. They've all used it. They love it. It allows them to define the perceptions they want to leave, and also gets them clear about what they want their brand to stand for. And in fact, just to give you an example, as you might expect, we have done this, I have done this, but Kevin has done this, and I wanted to really have Kevin explain how he went through the process and really what his brand stands for.
That's right. And as Carl mentioned, before I went through this process, I had thought about this, and I had given thought to who I am as a person and who I am as a professional, who I am as a salesperson, and all of your salespeople have thought about this as well. But what this allowed me to do was to build a language and to be able to discover and articulate what my personal brand was. And so if you think about this, the green part of the model that talks about our roles, I really have these multiple roles as a person. I'm a consultant, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a volunteer, and a father. And so first thing I was able to do is identify, what are those roles. And then as you move around clockwise on the model, it helps us to set some standards. In other words, how do we do that? And so I take those roles, and I have kind of these 5 core, if you will, values. And that is, I have a grow or die attitude, and that is, I believe you have to be growing intellectually and professionally, and I have this attitude that you have to grow and help your colleagues and your peers and your family grow. I also want to be helpful first, and in other words, help first and get credit second. I always want to do the right thing. I want to do what I say, and I want to have a thoughtful approach to my relationships, my professional relationships, my relationships with my prospects and my customers and my family, and anyone that I know and work with. So those are the standards that I've set for myself. And then as I went around, how do I deliver this? How do I relate with others? How does these standards that I've set demonstrate themselves in my thinking, my behaviors, and my actions and my deeds? And so if you were to ask people about me, and what they would say is, well, Kevin he's humbly confident, he's very friendly, and he tends to be actively engaged. And so through those styles and those actions and my behaviors, I've demonstrated and anchored and probably more importantly established those perceptions and impressions that I want to leave in those interactions. And my brand promise is integrity, respect, and responsibility. And that is, integrity is do what I say I'll do it in a thoughtful and meaningful way. Respect is respect other people and respect myself. And responsibility is taking personal responsibility for my actions. And so the point of walking you through this is I've gone through this process and I've found it extremely helpful in building my personal brand and deepening customer and client relationships. And this is not difficult to do. What is really interesting about this for me was it gave me a common language and a framework to think about this and articulate it and capture it and convey it and consciously convey it through my behaviors and my thinking and my actions and my deed. And I will say that I had thought about this. I just hadn't have a framework and a model to do this. And so the real value of this is now I can step back and consciously think about and address at this touch point with this prospect or customer, what is the impression or the perception that I want to leave at this moment in time. And so this has been an extremely valuable tool, and it's really a complete system and a simple set of very practical tools that you can use and apply in a relatively short order. And so it's been very valuable to me. So with that, Carl, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Kevin. I just want to add two quick things as we move on here. We have observed a lot of people doing this. People like to find their personal brand. It helps them put a stake in the ground. It helps them really acknowledge who they are. So people like that. But at the end of this process, where they go to use the personal brand toolkit and go through that workshop, now what we've established and what you've established as somebody who manages who's a marketing or sales leader, is you now know that you build a personal brand building framework so that you now know that you have this brand at your access to integrate and to leverage. And that's really important. So we get to the next piece, which is brand alignment. Now, the power of brand alignment is something I want to spend just a couple of minutes on. But what's really important here with the Brand 3 framework is that when you are able to align the personal brand of salespeople or customer-facing people with the product and corporate brands, you now have brand building possibilities you never had before. At the very least, if you have built strong personal brands, you now have strong personal brands close to the customer that you can leverage. And so this process of brand alignment is something we created about 8 years ago, where we used this model of personal brand, and we found that there was a way to use this and find a corporate brand. And by the way, this idea of alignment has been experienced by people over 23 different countries, so it does. And what we found out is that there's all sorts of research, which we don't have time to quote today, and I'm happy to provide if you'd like, that organizations that are that demonstrate the longest level of sustained success have at the core the highest level of customer engagement when compared to their competitors. And we know if you want the highest level of customer engagement, the power of brand alignment says the more you get personal brands in your company aligned with the corporate brand, then the higher level of customer engagement you will have. That brand building is inside out. Well, this is interesting. It's worked for us. But, you know, when you inject the fact that salespeople, the more salespeople have an impact on the customer loyalty, the more you have to change this model. And this is the model, and what we're talking about now is gaining getting a strong alignment between the salesperson's personal brand, the one there on the one to the right in the green area. When you have a strong alignment between the salesperson's brand and the customer, you have a chance of high customer engagement, and you have even higher levels of potential customer engagement the more aligned the salesperson's brand is with the company's brand. And this is really important. And you can, by the way, you could extend this conversation further, and you could look, in some of our clients, look at this model with the idea of how do they build a strong sales team brand? What's the alignment between the brand of the sales team inside the company and all of its sales people? But the idea being that once you acknowledge the importance of the salesperson's brand close to the customer, you have to gain alignment with all three of those brands. And so this power brand alignment, this model that we've used so successfully, we discovered that when salespeople's personal brands have a significantly high proportion of impact on the customer loyalty, you have to change the model, and that we did. And how do we accomplish that? Well, we have this workshop we've designed, and this is called the Brand 3 Brand Alignment Workshop. Now, this is a workshop, again, depending upon how you want to customize it. It's a 4 to 6 hour workshop. Hold on, technical difficulty. A 4 to 6 hour workshop that is designed to help salespeople understand specifically the alignment that their personal brand has with the brand of the company, and not in products. And not only that, but about 40% of this workshop is designed to create specific strategies to integrate and leverage all three brands together. And so this brand alignment workshop has proven to be very, very very powerful, and particularly when you put it with the sales arena and put it in a sales context. So this 4 to 6 hour workshop focuses on aligning all three of those brands. This is where you align the personal brand, the salesperson, and also where the marketing leader in this workshop comes up with specific strategies about integrating all three. So as an example, this has come up in a number of conversations. When some organizations might develop what they call a solution sales strategy, that they want to get more revenue from the same customer. They want the same customer to buy more products or services. Then they can do all the marketing planning, and they can change their marketing mix all they want. They can come up with pricing schemes that encourage the purchase of multiple products. They can have brand extension strategies. They can do all those things. But you know what? If you don't have the personal brand of salespeople who know how to deliver solution sales, if you have built a sales force that's all around selling transactions or just selling individual products and moving on to the next customer, those personal brands aren't the best brands to do solution selling. So in this workshop, you bring those marketing strategies to bear and come up with specific implications about how you integrate all three of those brands. I mean, how many times have you folks heard, gee whiz, we don't have the right salespeople in the field, or a part of our salespeople are the old guard, they don't get the new ideas. Well, this workshop is designed to take care of all that and develop strategies. But once all this is done, we develop strong personal brands of the salespeople. We go through the alignment process. There's a strong alignment between the salesperson and the company brand and the product brand. There's a strong sales team brand. Well, that's the beginning. The next step is the action and learning. How do we keep this alive? How do we sustain that? And here I want to throw it over to Kevin, because he really is an expert on how you put together learning programs.
Thanks, Carl. I put this slide up because one of the questions that I have frequently when we're talking about the value of personal brand and the integration of personal brand and aligning personal brand is, well, Carl, Kevin, what if we're using spin selling, or what if we're using consultative selling, or what if we're using challenger selling, or one of the other sales models? How does this fit into that model? And the reality is, it fits in perfectly, and it integrates perfectly. And if you think about incorporating these concepts into a sales process, whether your sales process has 12 steps, 7 steps, 5 steps, or it's the spin model with 4 basic components, if you think about every sales process has 5 stages. You open it, you build rapport, you ask questions and qualify, you recommend some type of a solution, you manage objections and answer questions, and then you close and agree on next steps. And so whether we're talking about spin, counselor selling, challenger selling, or impact selling, or any other sales process, this approach integrates exceptionally well. And as I think about this and these 5 stages, what happens is these are the various touch points that your salespeople have with your prospects and customers. So what the outcome is really creates a roadmap of perceptions for you to integrate that personal brand into those customer relationships. And so we've integrated personal brand throughout the entire sales process at each step. And so it gets back to, at each stage of the sales process, what impressions do you want to leave at each stage of the sales process? And so we have a well-defined program in terms of action learning that goes beyond not just the toolkit and the 4-hour workshop, but we have found that working with salespeople, you're asking them to synthesize this to their world and their life. And so one-on-one and small group implementation coaching at regular intervals allows your salespeople to, first of all, going through the toolkit and the 4-hour workshop, they've now discovered their personal brand and they're able to identify it and articulate it and start defining the perceptions and impressions that they want to leave. Through spaced repetition and one-to-one coaching and small group implementation coaching, we give them an opportunity to go out and begin applying this with their prospect and customer conversations, and then come back at a regular interval, whether it's every week or every couple of weeks or once a month, find out what's working, what's not working, and where some mid-course corrections or fine-tuning needs to take place. And so what I'm excited about in this approach is it really not only helps you to put the systems and the tools in place and understand the concepts from a high level and a practical level, but now we can provide an actionable plan to make sure that it's integrated and synthesized throughout the entire sales conversation, and it becomes a regular part of your salespeople's process. And this model has just been tremendously impactful and just worked exceptionally well. And so these 3 components that Carl talked about, the toolkit, the 4-hour workshop, and then the one-to-one and small group ongoing implementation coaching.
Thanks, Kevin. The one thing I would add, as a personal note here, when Kevin talked about different sales models, I know there's sales training curriculums and also sales models like the current one that seems to be in vogue is sort of this challenger model. You know, the one thing that when you embrace personal brand, it's real clear that you're telling salespeople is you don't have to be into some sort of mold. There's not one better than the other. It's about if you learn the principles of personal brand, you get to apply your personal brand to be as successful as you want. It's not something there isn't a certain model you're supposed to be. It's be more of who you are. And the extent to which salespeople and sales teams have more and more millennials or younger people, the less likely they are to accept models, the more likely they are to accept the authenticity that is the basis of personal brand. That's just a side note. And so what we hope to accomplish so far is, now that our webinar is coming to a close, is that to help you understand why Brand 3, what Brand 3 is, what the offer is, and how it really can, and we are convinced because we've seen it happen, I've seen it happen many, many times, how Brand 3 can help you rethink and reshape your marketing and sales leadership strategy. So with that, we would ask if there are any questions that you might have. If you do, speak up, and if you don't, we'll give you a little bit of time, and then we're going to move on to closing this thing up and getting people along their way. So,
any written questions, Catherine? No. Okay, so it doesn't sound like we have any questions at this time. If you do, go ahead and type them in, and we'll answer those on the fly. And so let me ask you, does this resonate with you? Can you see the value of integrating your salespeople and your customer service personal brand, deepening and strengthening customer relationships? Can you envision how this can help you leverage and build brand? We've got a mixed audience out there. We've got marketing people. From a marketing perspective, can you see how closing the final 3 feet of your branding and leveraging the power of that personal relationship can help you anchor that brand and your brand messaging into the sales conversation? And those of you that are sales leaders or salespeople, do you have a sense of how your personal brand can be leveraged to help deepen those customer relationships to set up a distinction and differentiate you from your competitors? If so, if a picture of embracing this approach is starting to resonate with you, and you want to explore deepening customer relationships by leveraging the power of brand alignment, and you have a need and you want to explore this further, I would encourage you to call Catherine Hendrickson. She sat in. She was our moderator today and our organizer. You can call her right there at the number on the screen, or you can simply go to the URL that's listed there to find out more information about leveraging power of brand alignment to deepen your customer relationships, and it really is going to be focused on helping your sales organization to leverage their personal brand and address all three components of your brand strategy. That's your corporate brand, your product or service brand, and the personal brand, and leveraging that completely to deepen those customer and prospect relationships. And so I would encourage you to give us a call, give Catherine a call at that number on the board, or go ahead and click through that URL. And I would also encourage you to do it right now, because I know you, particularly the sales leaders out there and the salespeople, as soon as you hang up, somebody's going to come in and light your hair on fire. So if it's something you'd like to explore further and drill down deeper, be sure to give Catherine a call or go out and click through that URL for more information. With that, I want to say thank you. And Carl, any closing comments for our audience?
No, Kevin, nothing in particular. But again, along with you, thanks everybody. It was quite a nice audience that showed up. Thank you for being a part of this. As you can tell, we're very excited about this innovation, and I truly believe this is an innovation in marketing, sales, integration. I know for a fact, all the feedback I've gotten over the last 5 years, that this idea of integrating the personal brand of salesperson is new, it's important, and it really is the last mile to differentiation building strong brands. So again, thank you everybody. Don't hesitate to call Catherine if you'd like more information, or go to the URL.